Now, I could do it without my papers, but the problem is I tend to ramble, and this keeps me on track and keeps me on time. And I tend to tell you more than I intend to tell you in the way of stories if I don't have my papers in front of me, but technically I should do it without papers, because I know what I'm going to say, and just go from there. Well, today we're looking at Matthew's Gospel, chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. And the title has come to me, All You Who Are Tired and Troubled. And so we're going to look at this passage, which tomorrow is Labor Day, so it fits with labor and work. And then next week, we're also going to look at another passage that talks about work. Of course, tomorrow is Labor Day, which was first started out to honor labor unions. And then it changed into or morphed into community labor efforts. But unfortunately, it moved away from something that's known as the Protestant work ethic, which was adopted from biblical principles. Now, Wikipedia says that the Protestant work ethic, or the Calvinist work ethic, or the Puritan work ethic, is a work ethic, a concept in theology and sociology and economics and history that emphasizes hard work, discipline, and frugality from people following or subscribing to the values that come from the Protestant faith. And I don't know about you, but we seem to have lost the Protestant work ethic. Well, the Bible has much to say on the value of work. Now, today is supposed to be, or tomorrow is supposed to be a day of rest from labor. So, do we rest, or is it just another holiday with many things to get done? And I'm afraid for a lot of people, that's what it is. It's just more stuff to get done instead of a day of rest or a day off. Now, I'm going to warn you, you might want to cover your ears. I'm just telling you. I have a video, and it's something that once I play it, it will be with you all the rest of today. You know, it's one of those songs that just sticks with you. So I'm telling you, you might want to cover your ears when I play it. You might even remember it all through the week. And it's an old song. It's been around forever. But I'll play a little bit of the beginning of it, of the context and the work, so that you know.
Dig with a shovel or a pick. The mine, in the mine.
since 1937. What kid has not sung that song? And now, it's going to be stuck in your head for the rest of the week. So, but it's a good song. It's a famous song, and it has a message. But we've changed that song a little bit over the years. I mean, I'm sure you've heard a variation of this. We now sing, I owe, it's off to work I go. So these guys were going home. And but if we had a diamond mine like the Seven Dwarfs, we probably enjoy our work a little bit more, wouldn't we? Well, there was a song back in the 70s, early 80s that Johnny Paycheck made famous. And it's also about work. Take this job and shove it. And it was a song about the difficulty of work and life, and I mean, they even made a movie from the song, which wasn't a good movie. But anyways, in the song, he's just tired of the futility of life and just working and not really seeing good results or the results that he wanted. So do you think the Bible has an answer for us? I mean, it's interesting that on Labor Day, a day we celebrate labor, why don't people work on Labor Day? I mean, it's not much of a holiday. In 1894 at Grover Cleveland, the president proclaimed the first Monday in September Labor Day. And through the years, it just turned into a day off work. Well, labor or work means many things to many different people. But it has been a few months, 2 months since the last holiday, so why not have another holiday to break up the monotony of work? Well, Time magazine said back in the 60s, in expert testimony given before one of the Senate subcommittees on time management, they predicted that advances in technology would radically change how many hours people work, how many hours a week people work. They forecasted back in the 60s now that the average American would be working 22 hours a week within 20 years. And the experts said the great challenge would be figuring out what to do with all the excess time. Well, here we are 50 years later with major advances in technology that I don't even think the experts could see back in the 60s. Well, how many of you are wondering what to do with all your excess time these days? The experts got it wrong. And, the problem is most of us are busy and we want rest from our busyness. But holidays, we take time to cook, to see families, to do things. We're running around, even though we're not doing the things we normally do, but we're a lot busier. We're trying to get things done, and we're never accomplishing everything. Well, in the Bible, the Jewish people were constantly seeking rest or refuge in God. In the book of Joshua, chapter 1, Moses has died, and God told Joshua to lead the Jewish people across the Jordan River into the Promised Land. And we're going to look at how the Promised Land is defined by Joshua as he's talking to the tribes of Israel. In Joshua chapter 1, verses 13 and 15. Remember what Moses, the Lord's servant, commanded you when he said, "The Lord your God will give you rest, and he will give you this land. Your wives, dependents, and livestock may remain in the land Moses gave you on this side of Jordan. But your best soldiers must cross over in battle formation ahead of your brothers and help them, until the Lord gives your brothers rest." There's that word rest again. "As he is giving you, and they too possess the land the Lord your God is giving them. You may then return to the land of your inheritance and take possession of what Moses, the Lord's servant, gave you on the east side of Jordan." See, the Bible tells us that true rest will and can only come from God. And that was a principal theme throughout the Old Testament. But in Hebrews chapter 4, in the New Testament, verses 1 through 3, it tells us about the rest that we find in Jesus. God's promise of entering his rest still stands. So we ought to tremble with fear that some of you might fail to experience it. For this good news that God has prepared this rest has been announced to us just as it was to them, the Israelites. But it did them no good because they didn't share the faith of those who listened to God. For only we who believe can enter his rest. As for the others, God said, "In my anger I took an oath. They will never enter my place of rest, even though this rest has been ready since he made the world." I mean, look at verse 3. For only we who believe can enter God's rest. Interesting. Well, let's look at Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke and learn from me, because I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." When you look at these verses, Jesus tells us exactly how we can have rest. Not just physical rest, but spiritual rest as well. And Jesus tells us three things that we need to find true rest. First, we must go to him. Second, we need to bring our weariness and our burdens. And third, we need to take up the yoke of Jesus. So look at verse 28 again. Going to Jesus means having a relationship with him. Jesus didn't say, "Come to the church and you'll find rest," though that's one of the best places to find and learn about Jesus, who gives us rest. It's a relationship with Jesus that we can and will find relief and rest. And just being a member of the church doesn't make you a Christian. And just because we're in a church doesn't mean that we have a relationship with Jesus. We need to come to him. And gathering information about Jesus doesn't make you a Christian. Joining a group doesn't make you a Christian. Having Christian parents doesn't make you a Christian. we first must come to Jesus to be truly at rest where we are in this life. Now everyone is searching for peace or rest for their soul. And Jesus clearly says, come to me, and I will provide that rest that you are searching for. It is a great rest and peace that you can have when you come to Jesus. And not only does Jesus say, come to me, he says, come to me and I will carry your burdens. And what he's saying is if you are tired of trying to please God by keeping all of these rules and all of these, trying to do the right things and following the rules and regulations that people have put on you, Jesus says, let me carry your burden of sin and shame. Come to me and I will give you rest from all of this. See, try as we might, sometimes we forget that we are saved by grace, not by works, as the Apostle Paul tells us in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9. For you are saved by grace through faith, and this is not from yourselves, it is God's gift, not from works, so that no one can boast. And so let's look at verses 29 and 30 again. Take up my yoke and learn from me, because I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Now a yoke is made of wood, and it's usually handmade to fit the shoulders of the animal or animals that were to be yoked. And the yoke was used to control animals while they worked. And sometimes when we talk of a yoke these days, those of you that work on tractors or have worked on cars, think of a modern one. A differential joint or a yoke. But that's not the type we're talking about. The yoke that the Bible talks about is still in use around the world. In fact, it's even in use here in Ohio with the Amish. This is the type of yoke that they use. And they use it for oxen, cows, horses, even goats are occasionally yoked together by using a yoke. And the yoke is the wooden harness that fits over the shoulders of the animals or horses or goats, and it's attached to a piece of equipment that the animal is to pull. It allows the animal to transfer their force to the wagon or the plow or whatever they are pulling. And it distributes the weight and the work equally. And so Jesus, when he says yoke, was referring to the burdens that we carry through life. Sometimes it's sins, sometimes it's the demands of religious leaders, or harassment or persecution, or even tiredness in searching for God. See, and that's what the Pharisees did during Jesus' time. They put all these conditions, they put all these requirements on people that they needed to do in order to reach God, to make it to heaven. Well, guess what? The modern church does the same thing. They add stuff that the Bible doesn't say or the Bible doesn't include. And so Jesus said in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 23, about what the Pharisees did. And by inference, what the modern church does. Matthew chapter 23, verse 4. They tie up heavy loads that are hard to carry and put them on people's shoulders, but they themselves aren't willing to lift a finger to move them. And then Paul ran into a problem with the other apostles. In Acts 15, chapter 10, verses 11. Now then, why are you testing God by putting a yoke on the disciples' necks that neither our ancestors nor we have been able to bear? On the contrary, we believe that we are saved through the grace of the Lord Jesus in the same way as they are. In other words, the Jewish people had the requirements of circumcision and other things to dietary law and those things to get closer to God. And so when Gentiles started coming and following Jesus and became disciples, the Jewish followers would say, well, you got to do the same thing. You got to get circumcised and you got to follow the dietary laws. And basically what they were doing was putting burdens, requirements on the people that the Bible does not require. And see, Jesus frees people from all these burdens. See, the rest that Jesus promises is love and healing and peace with God. Not the end of labor, not the end of work, but when we have a relationship with God, it makes us and it makes our work spiritually fruitful, and it gives us purpose. Now, the wooden yoke that I showed didn't look all that light. But having Jesus' yoke on us means that Jesus is working with us. He's pulling with us. Life is tough, and there will be challenges, and there will be difficulties. But putting on Jesus' yoke means that we are partnered with Jesus. It doesn't necessarily mean an easy life, but the weight of life, the problems of life, the burdens of life are now shared. And it falls on the shoulders of someone bigger and more powerful than you. Jesus has more pulling power, and he is helping us every step of the way if we are yoked with him. So Jesus said, "Come to me." But what the religious leaders said, what the Pharisees said, what the church says is do this. And then they add requirements and things that you're supposed to do and other things that God never said and are never found in the Bible. And churches do the same thing today. They add burdens to the people. You know, have the right clothes, have the right posture, do the right things, do work, get this done, and that will get you to heaven. But Jesus simply says, "Come to me." And Jesus had two commands that he wants us to follow. Love God, love one another. And so when we take up the yoke, which means coming to Jesus Christ by faith, we find the result in verse 29. Take up my yoke, learn from me, because I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Sometimes it takes asking for help if you want rest. If you're going to read the Bible or a good book, you need a nice, comfortable chair and a good spot. But sometimes you need help to get it there. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7, cast all your cares on him because he cares for you. Like it says in verse 29 of Matthew's Gospel, take up my yoke and learn from me, and you will find rest for your souls. By asking for Jesus' help, he will help us with our burdens. Because first, we find peace with God, and then we receive the peace of God. Trust him to take up your burdens and lighten your load. Amen. Let us pray. Almighty God, you are the only one that can give us rest, and so we look to you, we lean on you, we take your yoke upon us, because your rest is the best. You are the only one that can help us and see us through. And so help us to continue to trust you in faith and depend on you and ask for your help each and every day. Amen.